Once upon a time there was a wealthy merchant who had 3 daughters. The youngest of the daughters was called Beauty. The sisters did not like her because she was everyone's favorite. One day the father was going to go to the city and asked his daughters what to bring as a gift. The older sisters asked for precious dresses and adornments, and the youngest asked for a scarlet rose, the most beautiful in the world. The merchant became thoughtful, but promised that he would do everything possible to find such a flower, and hit the road. The father quickly found gifts for the eldest daughters, but for the youngest he could not find them. Each rose that the merchant met on his way was more beautiful than the previous one, wherever he was looking. And then the road led him into a dense forest. It was very dark and cold there. Suddenly lights appeared in the distance. Approaching, the merchant saw a huge ancient castle, all in gold and diamonds. Entering its gate, he entered a hall full of jewels. He saw that there was a table in the middle of the hall, and there were no dishes on it, and all the dishes were made of silver and gold. But the castle was empty, there was no one. The merchant thought that the owner would probably come any minute. He waited an hour, 2, 3, no one showed up. The merchant could not resist and sat down at the table. Having eaten from the belly, the old man hit the road. Driving along the alley, the merchant saw a rose bush of unprecedented beauty, and remembered the request of his youngest daughter. He drove up and picked the most beautiful rose. At the same moment, lightning flashed, thunder struck, there was a roar, and rose, as if out of the ground, in front of the merchant, and not a beast or a man, but some kind of monster, terrible and furry. It was too angry that the merchant picked his favorite flower instead of thanking the owner for his hospitality. The old man was very frightened and said that he would do anything, as long as he did not kill him. For such an offense, the beast agreed to marry one of his daughters. But only the one who wants to come herself, out of love for her father. And if none comes, then death to the merchant. The old man was grieving and decided to go home to say goodbye to his daughters. He did not want to give up any of them for a fierce beast. I got on my horse and went home. Having met the children, he gave gifts to everyone and told about his adventures. The older sisters pounced on the younger, they say, it was her fault she ordered a lousy flower, for which the father now has to pay with his life. To which Beauty replied that she would gladly go to the beast instead of her father. And so, the next day, Beauty hit the road. The horse quickly found its way back to the castle. Entering the hall, she found a table with exquisite wines and food. Beauty thought that the beast wanted to eat her, so she feeds her. As soon as she had dinner, there was a roar, and a terrible and hairy monster appeared, as if from under the ground. And the beast said to Beauty that since she herself came here of her own free will, it means that she has a good heart. And so the monster will also be kind to her. And with these words, the beast disappeared. Waking up in the morning, Beauty decided to take a walk. Entering one of the rooms, she saw an inscription on the table, "Whatever the beauty wishes, I will do." The girl thought that after all the monster is kind and probably he is not going to eat it. So they lived for a long time. The beast treated Beauty very well and fulfilled all her desires. One day the girl dreamed that her father was sick. She really wanted to visit him. The Beauty tearfully asked the beast to let her go and promised that she would definitely come back. The monster replied that she was free and could return whenever she wanted. The next day, Beauty put on her most expensive clothes and went to her father. He was very happy to see his daughter safe and sound. Her sisters came running and saw that she had become even more beautiful, and even dressed like a queen. A week later, Beauty had a dream that the beast was lying on the grass in the park and dying. She woke up in horror and decided to urgently return and cure him. When the girl approached the castle, she saw the lifeless body of the beast on the grass. Her heart was breaking with pity. The beauty rushed to him with tears and kissed him. And at the same moment lightning flashed, thunder struck, the whole castle was lit up with a bright light, and music played everywhere. The monster disappeared, and in its place the most charming prince lay on the grass. He told Beauty that this evil fairy had bewitched him and turned him into a monster, until a young beautiful girl fell in love with him and wanted to get married. The beauty gave him her hand, and they went to the castle. The next day, Beauty and the prince got married and healed happily ever after. This is how a good heart can break an evil spell. Once upon a time there was a little, nice girl. She was sweet to everyone who only saw her. But she was the loveliest and dearest of all to her grandmother, who did not even know what to give her beloved granddaughter. Once she gave her a red velvet hat. And since this hat was very suitable for her, and she did not want to wear anything else, they began to call her Little Red Riding Hood. Once her mother asked to take a piece of cake and a bottle of wine to her grandmother. They say that she is both sick and weak, it will be good for her. She ordered my mother not to run away from the road, otherwise she would fall and break the bottle, and then grandmother would get nothing. And when she comes to her grandmother, so that she does not forget to say hello to her. Little Red Riding Hood obeyed, took the presents and set off. And my grandmother lived already behind the forest, half an hour walk from the village. And as soon as Little Red Riding Hood entered the forest, she met a wolf. The girl, however, did not know what kind of fierce beast it was, and was not in the least afraid of him. She greeted politely. The wolf also behaved very decently, so Little Red Riding Hood told the wolf that she was bringing gifts to her beloved grandmother. And while she was telling how to get to her grandmother's house, the wolf thought to himself how he could eat not only the old woman, but also a pretty girl. And then the wolf thought of showing Little Red Riding Hood a huge meadow with beautiful flowers. Little Red Riding Hood, as she looked at the many wonderful flowers, thought that it would be nice to bring grandmother a fresh bunch of flowers, because that would also please her. Yes, and ran away from the road to the side, and began to collect flowers. Slightly picking one flower, as the other beckons her, it is even better, and she will run after that. And so it went further and further into the depths of the forest. And the wolf ran straight to grandmother's house and knocked on the door. Grandma asked who was there. And the wolf replied in a thin voice that it was Little Red Riding Hood who brought the pie and wine. The old woman believed and ordered to press on the latch and enter. The wolf pressed the latch, the door flew open, and he ran to his grandmother's hut. He rushed to grandmother's bed and swallowed it at once. Then he put on his grandmother's dress and her cap on her head, went to bed and waited. Meanwhile, Little Red Riding Hood ran and ran after flowers, and when she collected as many of them as she could carry, then she again remembered about her grandmother and went to her house. She was very surprised that the door was wide open, and when she entered the room, she called out to her grandmother. There was no answer. The granddaughter came up to the bed and saw grandmother was lying, and she had pulled her cap on her very nose, and it seemed so strange. Little Red Riding Hood asked with bewilderment why grandmother had such big ears. And the wolf answered in a grandmother's voice to hear better. Then Little Red Riding Hood asked why grandmother had such big eyes. To better see you, the wolf answered. And the arms are so big that it is easier to grip. And when Little Red Riding Hood saw the wolf's mouth and only asked why grandmother had such a nasty big mouth, the wolf pounced on her, screaming, "So I could eat you!" And how he jumped out from under the blanket and swallowed the poor girl. Having had enough in this way, the wolf again went to bed, fell asleep, and began to snore as much as he could. At that time a hunter was passing by the grandmother's house, heard snoring and wondered if something had happened to the old woman that she snored so. He entered the house, went to the bed and saw that the wolf was sleeping there. And he has been hunting this villain for a long time. He wanted to kill him with a gun, but it occurred to him that the wolf, perhaps, swallowed his grandmother and that she could still be saved. That is why he did not shoot, but opened his wolf's mouth wide, and saw a red cap flashed there. A girl jumped out of her mouth and said that her grandmother was still there. The hunter opened his wolf's mouth even wider, and the old grandmother somehow managed to get out behind the Red Riding Hood. They were delighted, began to hug and thank the hunter. They decided to teach a cunning wolf a lesson. They brought up large stones as soon as possible, stuffed them into the wolf's mouth and belly, and carried him out into the yard. And when the wolf woke up, he saw the hunter, and was about to escape, but could not bear the weight of the stones, and fell to the ground. This delighted all three, while the wolf got up and barely dragged its heavy belly into the dark forest. They never saw him again. This is how they taught the cunning wolf a lesson, and Little Red Riding Hood decided that she would never again disobey Mother's orders.